How you doing tonight? Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk up and running along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. It has been an eventful day, obviously, in Notre Dame land. We were kind of sitting around and waiting most of the day to find out to kind of when this was going to become official. And we kind of knew for a few hours that it was supposed to happen, but then it took a few more hours than we thought it was going to happen for it to happen. But when it's all said and done, Sam Hartman, now a member of the Notre Dame football team, the Wake Forest veteran quarterback, made it official this afternoon. What's your feeling right now, Jess, after we got this news this afternoon?
I was pretty excited, to be honest with you. I can't remember the last time that there's been this much, buzz around a Notre Dame quarterback. And that's instantly kind of what I thought of as, when's the last big name quarterback to kind of make this kind of splash at Notre Dame? And to me, the name that comes to mind first is, someone like Jimmy Clausen or Brady Quinn. And I know that they were good quarterbacks, after Ian Book was a great quarterback, what he did at Notre Dame, but I just don't think there was much hype around him, at least for me, at least. So, that's the thing I started thinking about immediately was, what kind of splash will this make kind of nationally? And then again, when's the last time we've seen so much attention around a Notre Dame quarterback?
I think, like just in terms of a quarterback making his commitment to Notre Dame, I think you've got to go back to Clausen for that when he was coming out of high school, because as good as Brady Quinn ended up being, he was not hyped and ballyhooed the way Jimmy Clausen was coming out of the state of Ohio. Yeah, and obviously those guys followed each other, with kind of a gap in between. But yeah, I think that you probably have to go back to those two guys, since there was, again, coming in the door, it's Jimmy Clausen. Just overall hype, probably Jimmy Clausen as well, and then obviously Brady Quinn before that, because Brady ended up with all the records going out the door. So really huge news with Sam Hartman. Again, it's something that has been out there for a little bit, and we knew it today. But I mean, you sit back and you look at Hartman's career: almost 13,000 yards, 12,967, an ACC record, 110 touchdown passes in 5 seasons at Wake Forest. Also had 41 interceptions, completion percentage of 59%. This past season, he threw for 3,701 yards, 38 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, completed 63% of his passes, which is the best of his career. His previous best was 58.9%. So, we'll go through all this here in a little bit. One thing really you look at, because he's not thought of as a mobile quarterback, and he's definitely not a Tyler Buchner type mobile quarterback. Ran for just 129 yards this year and 1 touchdown, but last year 363 yards and 11 touchdowns. He combined for 50 touchdowns last season. That is that's a big number. 50 touchdowns at the FBS level, playing in a Power 5 conference, no matter what conference this is. 50 touchdowns is a big number.
Yeah, and that's that. He set the ACC all-time passing touchdown record. And like you said, 50 touchdowns is a astounding number. No matter what Power 5 conference you're in, and you can even make the case, even if you're outside of the Power 5 conferences, 50 touchdowns is obviously going to get you some attention. So I'm really excited for the cannon that Sam Hartman is going to bring to this offense, because I think that's the number one thing that this team lacks this season. We all know about the great run game, the offensive line that, came along throughout the season. And what really felt like they were missing is stretching the ball downfield. And when you have guys like Tobias Merriweather, Braden Lindsey, who obviously isn't going to be coming back next year, and then, some of the other guys, it's only going to open up their game. And honestly, it's only going to open up the run game even more, because you're going to have to commit guys in the secondary to honor, Sam Hartman's arm. So I'm really excited to see, what comes out of this dual offense now, because it felt like it was, 75% run, 25% pass, but I think they could get to an equal playing field of 50% pass and 50% run.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a whole different level to this offense, especially when you're starting to bring in the wide receiver talent that they're bringing in. And we saw really good things, really good upside from guys like Thomas and Colsey. They started to emerge. Thomas was there, at different parts of the season. Colsey emerging down the stretch of the season, and Tobias Merriweather still just with one catch that he ended up with this season, amazingly enough. But Tobias will be out there, and you've got the transfer from Virginia Tech, so there's going to be some targets out there. This is going to be more than just a find the tight end passing game. And that's what's got to get a lot of people excited, because you add this dimension to that offense with already you've got the offensive line that you've got, and you've got all that talent in the backfield as well with all of those running backs. And I think this could be a really dangerous offense next week.
Yeah, when you take in consideration guys like Jaden Thomas, Deion Colsey, Tobias Merriweather, the transfer, these are all big frame wide receivers, big targets, downfield targets. And when you have, four guys, and then obviously we know that the tight end position is very talented at Notre Dame too. It's just, I think this is, if someone kind of made the comment, Hartman isn't an elite quarterback, or else he would be going into the draft this year. But I really think, if with the wide receivers that he has, and Notre Dame's run game, I really think that he can open it up and really blow out, a lot of passing stats this year, and really lead a good Notre Dame team, again, with an experienced defense too. So to me, this kind of fits that last big piece of the puzzle that Notre Dame has been kind of missing.
Shannon says, the irony, I turn on Irish Breakdown, you start talking about Sam Hartman, and on my radio in the background, Celebration by Kool and the Gang starts playing. So that's my feeling. Celebration. I think a lot of people celebrating right now. But Joe, so we can set the record straight, Hartman isn't an elite quarterback, or he would be getting drafted this year. We will make him better. He won't make us better. I still think Tyler Buchner could get it done. And I think Tyler Buchner could as well, and that's the other layer to this is Sam Hartman is not going to be given the job. These guys are going to compete for the job, both Hartman and Tyler Buchner. That competition, you would expect to make Tyler Buchner better. You would also expect the competition to help raise Hartman's level of play. And yeah, I mean, the guy's been around for 5 years already. He played 4 games in 2019, which is why he has a 6th season of eligibility remaining. I mean, you're absolutely right. He would be off to the NFL. But the difference is you can still win championships in college football without an NFL quarterback. And just because he's not going to the NFL does not mean you're not getting a really good quarterback. He can do a lot of things. The thing he's looking for is to get into this pro style offense, to get to Notre Dame as well, to potentially, boost his NIL, types, what he can get in NIL and that kind of stuff. I saw on his Twitter, like he was selling the NFTs in the middle of the season and stuff like that. I would imagine he'll have a lot better chance of selling more of those at Notre Dame than when he was at Wake Forest. But this is a stop that can definitely help him show himself in a different kind of offense than what he got to play in at Wake Forest. But just because he's not going to the NFL does not mean that he is not going to be a big elevation for Notre Dame in what they're getting with this kind of experience. Because again, look at Jack Cohn last year. Jack Cohn came in with half the credentials, if that, and
Right.
what, about less than a fourth of the total touchdown passes that Sam Hartman came in here with. And look what Jack Cohn was able to do behind an offensive line and running game that was nowhere nearly as good as what Notre Dame had this season.
Yeah, and you brought up, I think the biggest point for what Hartman is looking for out of transferring is there's no more slow mesh, because the slow mesh isn't run in the NFL. So I think that Sam Hartman largely wants to get into a system that is a pro style kind of offense to really, show scouts and furthermore develop his skill set that he's ready for the NFL. So I'm excited because I think that the slow mesh offense, not my personal favorite, but it'll be exciting to see what he can do in an actual pro style offense.
Yep, exactly. I'm sitting here scrolling through. I'm looking at a lot of these comments. We're starting to get a lot uh, coming in, and the troll sniper Hartman immediately raises the bar in the quarterback room. Imagine if we had him against Syracuse and Clemson, 2 teams he destroyed this season. 6 passing touchdowns against Clemson. alone. And I think that that's a benefit as well when you're playing 5 ACC teams a year and all this experience he has in the ACC. He's familiar with these teams and the defenses that he's going to be facing when he rolls out. No, on the other side of that, they'll be familiar with him as well, but it's going to be a different system. So, I think there's still some benefit to Hartman having that experience against a lot of the teams that he's going to see next season.
Yeah, it's
If
very
he's the starter,
beneficial.
we're not anointing him, and I realize there's going to be a divide on that. A lot of people assuming that you're bringing in the veteran. They're going to compete for the job. That's Marcus Freeman's mantra is competition. And obviously bringing in a veteran like this, the veteran is going to believe that he's going to win that job. But what you also want is that he can help, Tyler Buckner raise his level with the competition. I don't think the competition between Tyler Buckner and Drew Pine raised Tyler Buckner's level of play the way competing in the spring and in the fall can raise Tyler Buckner's level of play competing against a veteran like this.
Yeah, and I thought you bring up a good point there, and something that I hadn't really thought about is, Sam Hartman obviously played in the ACC, and Notre Dame plays a predominantly ACC schedule, so that's something that's going to benefit both sides, both parties. Is Notre Dame's getting a quarterback that is experienced against ACC teams, the defenses that he has seen in coverages and etc. And then obviously Notre Dame not having to go through so much teaching, with the guy since there's so many similar opponents.
Yep. Exactly. And let's see. Well, let me just ask you this. Does adding Hartman, Jesse, do you think it automatically makes Notre Dame a college football playoff contender next season?
I don't know about automatically, but I had pretty good feelings about them, with or without Hartman. I still think that Tyler Buckner showed a lot in that Gator Bowl, and that he was going to kind of polish things up even more, outside of playing his first game with a offensive line and a run game that had been in sync compared from Marshall to the Gator Bowl. So I had good feelings about, the Tyler Buckner leading this team to the playoff offensively wise. And I feel like with Hartman, if he does beat out Tyler Buckner, I feel like even more. I feel like there's a boost in my confidence just because of what he can do with his arm and how it allows Notre Dame to open up their passing game and kind of shift from being a one-dimensional offense to being more of a complete two-dimensional offense.
Yeah. Chris says Sam Hartman got sacked by Drew Tranquil. Think about that. That's how long this guy's been around for a while. Again, he's already been around for 5 years. But
I remember being at that first game, Wake Forest and Notre Dame. I believe that was Ian Book's debut as well, and they beat up on them at home. I remember being at that game, and Sam Hartman got pressured around, I want to say like 20 times or something like that. He had a long day, but on that defense, there was eventually 7 draft picks that came out of it. So it was a rude awakening for Sam Hartman in his early debut, early career against Notre Dame.
You've got 2 degrees of separation though from Sam Hartman, because Sam Hartman got sacked by Drew Tranquil. And I don't even know if I've mentioned this here before, but Jesse played against Drew Tranquil in high school. Jesse's
bad memories.
Jesse and Drew Tranquil's junior season sectional championship game, South Bend Adams against Fort Wayne Carroll. And unfortunately for the Adams Eagles, Drew Tranquil took over that game in the second half.
Yeah, they just ran Wildcat with Drew Tranquil and said, "Stop us." And unfortunately, there was not a lot of stopping going on.
Yep. And I believe he had at least one of the key interceptions in the second half as well, if I remember right. If it wasn't him, it was his brother. I know that for sure. Yeah. To the question we were talking about, does he make Notre Dame a college football playoff contender? I think at the very least, you're looking at you're raising the floor on this thing. Like the floor, I think you've got to be around 10-2 now. Again, when you're adding a quarterback with this experience level into the mix, and that's why you go out and get this guy, because you've got a lot of talent on this team and you're bringing in more talent next year. Are there going to be some questions defensively? Of course there are, but having an offense that can potentially be a lot more high power than you've seen in a long time, and again, more multi-dimensional than we've seen in a long time at Notre Dame, gives you a lot more margin for error as well. And so when you look at their schedule next year, probably going to be a little bit tougher than this year's schedule. You're still going to have Ohio State, Clemson, and USC on there. But I think adding a guy like this, like you look at the fact that Clemson, Klubnik, we assume is going to be the starting quarterback next year. He still doesn't have a whole lot of experience. Ohio State is going to have another quarterback next year who's going to be far less experienced than Sam Hartman. And that now that game is going to take place 3 games into the season as opposed to the season opener, but still Notre Dame went on the road to Ohio Stadium with a first-time starting quarterback against CJ Stroud, who came into the season as a Heisman Trophy contender. So it's going to be flipped next year in terms of the experience factor at the quarterback position between those two teams and what'll be the biggest early season game for both of those teams.
Yeah, and I see a lot of kind of stuff going on in the chat right now talking about Notre Dame's defense, but we talked about this on Tuesday. The college football game has switched in our opinion kind of to being what kind of offensive output are you going to get? Can you keep up offensively? And that was proven by the TCU Michigan semifinal and the Georgia and Ohio State semifinal. So, I don't think that there's anything wrong with potentially adding an offense that's going to gain more power. And on the back end, the more that your offense is on the field and the less that your defense is on the field, that's obviously going to help them. And I feel like naturally the defense is going to progress and get better. I know that there's questions on the defensive line and linebacker, but those are positions that have seen experience this year, through a new scheme with Al Golden. So, overall, I just think everything is going to be better next year, assuming that Hartman wins the starting position. Even if Tyler Buckner's the starter, I think you're going to see a better offense and you're going to see a better defense next season.
Yeah, and Wayne says you guys are making Hartman sound like Trevor Lawrence. He looks like another Ian Book. Well, Ian Book didn't finish his career with 110 touchdown passes. That's what Sam Hartman has walking in the door here at Notre Dame. And again, you don't have to be Trevor Lawrence, a guy who's going to be drafted in the first round to win college football games because of the disparity in talent from team to team that you're going to play. And having this, again, Jack Cohn came in here and went 11-1 last year. If you're going to put Sam Hartman up against Jack Cohn, who are you going to take in that comparison? And Jack Cohn went 11-1 last year because he had experience and it was easier for him to assimilate into the offense and they were able to do some things. They had to work around his lack of mobility, again, because of a lack of an offensive line and running game in front of him and around him. So, no, I'm not saying that Sam Hartman's going to come in here and compete, for a Heisman Trophy next season. But at the same time, the reason you get him is because of the experience. Sam Hartman has a ton more experience and probably overall ability than Jack Cohn had, and Jack Cohn worked out pretty well in his 1 year at Notre Dame. That's my point.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there.
So what's your biggest concern, / potential downside to this whole thing, do you think?
For me, the biggest question that comes is obviously this is a 1 year rental. So the biggest concern to me at that point becomes, are you hindering or taking away from the development of someone like Tyler Buckner, who you can have as your starting quarterback for maybe, 2, 3, 4 seasons, whatever it might be, and just allowing a guy to come in and run the show for a year. So for me, it kind of, I know it's good because you want to win now, but unfortunately, it could potentially hinder the development of the rest of the quarterback room for a guy that you're trying to develop for long term, but you're going after short term success, if that makes sense.
Right. Your boy Irish Chi-Town wants to know if you think Notre Dame makes the playoffs if Hartman had started for Notre Dame. Would they have made the playoffs this year if Hartman had started for Notre Dame?
I think that's hard to say because a lot of what Notre Dame went through was growing pains early on, and you saw them get better towards the end. And those early on games, where they lost. And I don't think they lost because of quarterback play. I think they lost because of overall team play. They weren't a complete defense. They weren't a complete offense along the offensive line. They hadn't established their identity as a running team. So I still think that there would have been growing pains. I think you can maybe add one more win, but I don't know if it would take them over the top to the playoff.
I think too. I think having him at quarterback, you're going to beat Marshall and you're going to beat Stanford. I think so. I think a guy like him would have made the difference over what you had, because I think having him in the Marshall game, even though the offensive line wasn't up to standard yet and they weren't able to run the ball, I think that he's the kind of guy who you could have, more so than with Tyler Buckner, you could have put the game on his shoulders and he could have made some plays for you. And again, like if you were even bringing him in the door this season, if you had him this season with 3+ years of experience that he had, heading into this season with all of that experience, that's way more than what you had with either Tyler Buckner or Drew Pine, and just his ability, to make plays, to read defense, to have that veteran poise and presence and all that kind of stuff. So I think they could have won both of those games. Now the two that they lost, I think they're more competitive in both of those games, but definitely against Ohio State, because of where the team was as a whole, there are still enough questions, to me. But I definitely think they could have ended up being a 10-2 team if they had someone with his kind of experience and talent level this season.
Yeah, so I think another concern, and it's kind of popped up here recently, is his ability, or should I say, the ability to not turn the ball over. Obviously, everyone talks about his interceptions, having 12 interceptions this season, and I understand that that's an issue, but I think that there needs to be some kind of context that goes with his interceptions, because Wake Forest couldn't run the ball,
Right.
really, and I was looking at some stuff
Yeah,
earlier
and
when
that's part of his quarter, his touchdown numbers too, is they throw the ball so much more.
right,
And
and they were a
just the
pass
fact that the
heavy
more you put it in
offense.
the air, the more chances that each of those things are going to happen.
Right. And what I was looking at earlier is, he had games where he had the games in which he had multiple interceptions. There were 6 of them, right? And in those games, the rushing attack averaged 2 yards, 0.7 yards, 2.1 yards, 2.6 yards, and 3.2 yards per carry. So when you're not running the ball well and you got to score, you're going to ask your quarterback to set up and launch it. And when you're in second and third down long situations, you're going to be asked to press the ball downfield. And I think another stat that I saw that really kind of goes with this is no one averaged a larger depth of target than Hartman at 12.8 yards, right? And so that has to do largely with his scheme that he was in. But again, he's being asked to throw the ball downfield a lot because Wake Forest didn't really run the ball all too well. So I know that that's a double-edged sword, because obviously it inflates his touchdown numbers and his passing yard touchdowns, but at the same time, it's going to also, increase the interceptions as well. I just don't think he's going to be asked to throw the ball as much at Notre Dame, but I also think that
Yeah.
he's going to get better help on the back end against coverages, safeties, and corners, because Notre Dame's going to have a very good running attack.
That's what I was going to say. The running game that Notre Dame is going to have is going to potentially make him even better. And just by having that, the way this system runs, I don't think you're going to see a 10 interception quarterback next season. I think that number will be below 10 because of the fact that he'll have a running game to lean on. And, vice versa. The running game will make him better, and he will also make the running game, I think, that much more effective. I think that it's going to become less predictable next year with a guy like him. And Jerry's saying lots of fans love the backup quarterback at Notre Dame, so people are going to lose their mind if Hartman ends up being the starter.
That's
And
every year.
yeah, I mean that's never going to change, because the minute Sam Hartman throws his first interception, people are going to be calling for Tyler Buckner. So I mean, there's just no way around that. I think what has a lot of people scared, though, is the impact this has on Tyler Buckner, in multiple ways. But do you think is this move worth it now that it's official and Sam Hartman is coming to Notre Dame? Is it worth it? Is it worth the risk if a one season rental on a veteran quarterback if it means that Tyler Buckner does end up transferring?
This is a tough question. I wasn't prepared for you to bring that kind of heat to me. So here's the thing. I think I think the way that you can, I can't answer that question right now, but I think you can answer that question based off of Notre Dame's success. If they make it to the national championship and potentially, win slash lose a close game, I don't know. I don't even know if you could say losing the national championship is worth it. I think it's kind of all or nothing at this point. I think that you have to, one, get into the playoffs, and two, take a step in the playoffs, because Notre Dame hasn't made it past the first round in the playoffs. So I at least need to see them win that first round, get to the championship, and potentially win a national championship in order for it to me to be seen as a payoff.
I mean, I definitely think that they are bringing this guy in because they think that this pushes them right back into the college football playoff mix. And I think it does as well. Again, I'm not guaranteeing that they're going to be in the playoff, but they're going to be in the mix with this guy. Again, with those 3 big dates that you circle on the calendar. It's what's tough is we we get to see a glimpse not even a week ago of what Tyler Buchner has to offer, and there's a ton that he has to offer there. What we've known all along, all this talent, all this upside. I don't think he's going to transfer, but we don't know that he's not going to transfer, and the transfer portal is up for grabs. If he stays, having a guy again with all this experience and competing against this guy both in the spring and into whatever extent you would assume into the fall, I wouldn't think that they're going to name a starting quarterback after the spring. I think they didn't do it last year. I think it makes every sense to take that, it makes sense to take that into fall. I'm not saying you push it all the way through the fall, but I think that having a guy with Sam Hartman's experience in the room, Tyler Buchner hasn't had that yet. He's had a little bit of that with Jack Cohn, but to a different extent. I think that it can really benefit him going forward to be in the room with a guy like that. Is it worth the risk? If Buchner does end up transferring, it would really stink. But at the same time, you've got a couple of really good, recruits coming in the next couple of classes in Minchie and Carr. So you're bringing in more talent. You would hate to lose a guy like Tyler Buchner. I guess I'm probably not answering my own question very well, but it would definitely be a buzzkill. But I guarantee you this: if Notre Dame goes into that USC game with either one loss or no losses, well, I guess USC is going to be in the middle of the season next year. If they go, into that Stanford game, not that the Stanford game is going to mean as much, but if they go into that at the end of the season with one loss or 0 loss, and they're sitting there in college football playoff contention, I think that everyone's going to be pretty happy about that, regardless of who the number 2 guy is.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'm on the same boat as you. I don't think that Tyler Buchner is just going to pack it up and transfer. I think that he understands, that there is a viable competition on the table, and if he gets beat out, it's 1 year, right? It's not like this guy is here for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's 1 year. I think it becomes a serious situation the year after that when Carr and Minchie are here, and if somehow one of those 2 guys beats out Buchner for the starting position, then I think you'd run into some real issues. But I don't think that Tyler Buchner, knowing that this was coming, right? Because they told Drew Pine, so obviously that that conversation had to be had with Tyler Buchner. If he wanted out,
Buchner was asked about it a couple weeks ago before the bowl. He knew it was coming,
Right. And so I don't think that Buchner necessarily just packs it up and leaves. And again, if he gets beat out by someone like Sam Hartman, this is a guy with, that's going to have 6 years of experience. It's a perfect opportunity to learn from someone and kind of build your arsenal and your passing attack, because we all know Sam Hartman's not a dual threat, right? He's only going to beat you with his arm. So if Tyler Buchner can learn ways to, learn some things from Hartman about, being able to pass the ball, getting the ball up and down the field, and then combine it with obviously what he can do with his legs, I think that only makes someone like Tyler Buchner that much better. It's just going to be Tyler Buchner's perspective, right? Does he get kind of, I guess, for lack of better terms, butthurt by getting beat out by someone like Sam Hartman? Or does he take it, in stride and take it as an opportunity to learn from someone?
Because I know there are some people who are worried about like Tyler Buchner's psyche and stuff like that. How does he handle that if he does get beat for the job and all that kind of stuff? I would think that it makes him, I think it only makes him better. Having this competition makes him better. Again, I think that when he goes into the spring and he's competing against Hartman for this job, you've got a better level of quarterback that you're playing against. I think it is only going to elevate his game. And just what we know from the past, how this quarterback room has worked over the past few years, even though these guys have competed against each other for the job, Pine and Buckner this year, Pine and Cone last year, and before that, obviously Ian Book, and Pine wasn't necessarily competing against him for the job, but he was in the room with Ian Book. All these guys have gotten along together really well, and they have helped each other in that room. And I think that Tommy Rees and Marcus Freeman have to be comfortable with that Hartman is the kind of guy who's not just going to come in and it's going to be, just for himself, that's going to be a part of it as well, that he's helping these young guys develop, because Kenny Menchie's going to be in that room as well. And so Steve Angeli and Paulus, for that matter. So I think that there's a chance for a guy like this to come in and really help, kind of raise the overall caliber of that room with his presence, because of the experience that he has and the things that he can help impart on these guys.
Yeah, and I think there was a comment that you starred here, and I think that it's a viable question.
Which one is it?
Is playing both quarterbacks a possibility? And I
Yeah,
think that
I was
that's
going to bring that
something.
up.
I think that that's something that has to be spoken to as well, because I like the fact of using Tyler Buckner in the red zone, inside the 20, inside the 15, because of what he can do with those quarterback draw plays. So I don't think that is entirely ruled out either, of having specific packages for someone like Tyler Buckner. Again, I don't. I think that there's a lot to kind of still be worked out, and even if Hartman wins the starting position, I could very well see Buckner packages that are used outside of Hartman.
Well, like red zone type stuff, as an example, because of the added mobility and that the added dimension of the legs that Tyler Buckner has down in the red zone. I could see that being a place for him. Their skill sets, again, Buckner is still much more of a runner and a faster runner than Sam Hartman, but at the same time, their skill sets are much closer, obviously, than like Buckner and Jack Cohn, for example. So there was a clear cut reason to get him on the field. Now, there were also times when like things had kind of sputtered. They obviously weren't able to run the ball. Jack Cohn wasn't, maybe as effective. So they kind of brought in Tyler Buckner as a spark, and they did some of that. I don't think you do that, but I think you can still, because it still needs to be, if Tyler Buckner is the number 2, it still needs to be a big developmental year for him. And it stinks because the quarterback position and the offensive line position right behind it are the two positions where you sub the least. Like defensive line, you rotate guys in and out all the time. Linebackers, defensive backs, whatever, wide receivers, running backs, you've got guys coming in and out all the time. You very rarely do it at quarterback, and you do it just a little bit less at or a little bit more at the offensive line position. But if you find a clear-cut defined role, I think again, for the development and the future development of Tyler Buckner, I think it makes a lot of sense. But I don't think you're out there alternating series and doing that kind of stuff. But if
No,
you can find a clear-cut package for a guy with Tyler Buckner's skill set to get him on the field, I think.
100%, and I think that's exactly what we'll see is some sort of. I don't think that Buckner is completely just out. I still think that he'll get some sort of
Yeah.
opportunities. I still think that someone brought up a good point. In Cohen's year, they used Tyler Buckner, and he kind of was unpolished at that point. But now think about it. He's had an entire season to sit up in the box with the offensive staff. He played it great in a bowl game. He's a better passer. He's a better runner. And so if you're using him in combination with Hartman, I think that is only better compared to what we saw with Jack Cohn and Tyler Buckner, last season.
Yeah. Chris says Taylor has a much higher ceiling than Hartman. Absolutely, because
he's much younger. This is a guy in his sixth year still, or is in his sixth year.
yeah, exactly. And Tyler Buckner has played in a handful of games since he's been in college. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's still a ton of upside. I mean, I think everyone sees the upside with him. Charlie Weiss's last belt loop has a super chat. I'm not saying Tommy promised Hartman the job, but
he doesn't come here
he
to sit
doesn't
on.
come here to sit on the bench This is his last year. Flip side, Hartman can win ND it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I unfortunately that's a guy isn't coming here with 1 year remaining to come to a pro style offense to kind of bolster his draft prospect, help a team out, and elevate Notre Dame overall, unless he's, I would say, like 90% chance that he's going to be the starting quarterback. I don't. I think there's far more options that he could have went to in the portal if Notre Dame said to him, it's kind of 50-50. We don't know if you're going to be the starter. I think they basically said there's a good chance. There's going to be some competition, but that's going to be left on the field. But again, I just don't see why a guy would come here in his final year if he was going to essentially ride the bench.
No, but I think at the same time, yeah, there's some kind of conversation about, you're going to compete with the guy that we have in the spring or whatever it happens to be. You're going to compete for the job, but at the same time, again, they think that this guy can get them into that playoff picture by bringing him in, or they wouldn't be bringing him in. Another super chat from Tyler. I'm tired of loyalty leading to mediocrity. Why are we crying over Buckner leaving? If he loses a quarterback battle, do we want to win or not? That's the question. And, I've talked about it before a lot with Vince, just about recruiting the quarterback position. The way they've recruited the position in the past, where you kind of shoot for, for a higher rated guy, and then maybe you settle for another guy in the next cycle, and it's been kind of uneven. It definitely looks like that philosophy is changing with the fact that you've got Minchie and Carr on tap in back-to-back classes right now. And I think that just like at these other big programs, whether it's Georgia or Ohio State or wherever it happens to be, you shoot for the highest level talent you can get, and you have to accept the fact that if they're going to sign and they get here, only one guy's going to have the job, and you're probably going to lose a transfer every couple of years, but
I mean,
but if
look
you're
at
recruiting at that high level and they're competing and the best guy gets the job, you're going to have a better quarterback. And then, you're just going to go out and recruit the next guy to come in after him, even if you lose somebody.
I mean, essentially what you're doing is creating a quarterback farm system. Look at,
Yeah.
Alabama's quarterback room. I can't remember what year it was. They had Tua, Jalen Hurts, and Mac Jones. Those are all three NFL quarterbacks. Do you think that, they were sitting there upset that they had to, potentially, start a guy that had, just as much, if not just a little bit more talent than the guy behind him?
True.
No, they did what they were going to do to win games. Remember when Trevor Lawrence came into Clemson as a freshman and Dabo had to make the decision, to essentially start Trevor Lawrence as a freshman because he was the better option at the time. Do you think Clemson was upset about that? No, it ended up turning into national championships for them. So again, I don't think that this is a big of a problem as what many people are making out to be. You want a lot of good talent in your quarterback room.
Right. And you hope that they stay and compete. And then, and that's all you can do. Some guys are going to transfer. One guy already made his decision. We'll see what happens with Tyler Buckner. I still have the feeling that he won't, that he's going to stay and compete with this. And to your point about Alabama and those quarterbacks, Mac Jones sat for 3 years behind those guys. He came out, had 1 year as a starting quarterback, and he got drafted in the first round, So there are worse things that can happen than maybe having to sit for a little bit and compete for a job. Obviously, Jalen Hurts transferred, went to Lincoln Riley's system, and turned into an NFL quarterback himself. But, it's just, you've just got to go get the best talent you can have, let them duke it out for the job, let the best guy win. And then you're probably going to have some and that's what's going to happen, I think, at a lot of positions. The more you keep recruiting at a more elite level, you're going to have a lot of talent, and that's going to mean that some of those guys aren't going to get to play as much as they want, and it's going to mean some of those guys are going to leave as a result. You're just going to have to kind of get used to that, but that's where you want to be as a program. With the transfer portal the way it is right now, perfect world, they all stay, and you're stockpiled with talent. But as we know, the world ain't perfect, and the transfer portal ain't perfect, and you're going to lose some guys. But if you keep going out and getting more and better talent, you're still going to be better in the long run.
It's just going to breed more talent. It's going to better competition leads to an increase in talent. Tyler Buckner's not just going to sit back and watch the position be taken from him. He's going to compete, and that's only going to elevate him as a quarterback.
Yes. Michael says if Tyler is going to play like he does, he's going to have to get stronger and put on a whole nother layer of armor to withstand the punishment. I would agree with that. He definitely, because of the injury history that he definitely has to continue to get, bigger, stronger, a little more muscle. Obviously, you don't, for a guy, he looks like he's got some room to fill out. I mean, he doesn't have to look like a bodybuilder, but he definitely does need another layer on him, I think, to protect himself from some of those hits. And he also just has to learn to get smarter, know when to get down and not take hits, get out of bounds. And he did a better job of that in the Gator Bowl, I thought, as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And what I want to ask you, or the question that I'd like to pose to you is, if you're essentially, who do you feel better about the beating next season? Do you feel better that Sam Hartman is going to beat Ohio State, USC, and Clemson, because they got to play those four teams in a span of 4 weeks? Like, you got Ohio State, then you get USC, then you get Wake Forest, and you get to Clemson. That's going to be a tough stretch. Do you feel more comfortable with a quarterback who has 48 games under their belt, or a quarterback that has 3 games under his belt and hasn't even started a full season?
Yeah. I mean, to me, the answer is pretty obvious. Obviously, I feel better with 48. And again, they wouldn't have gone out and looked for a guy with this kind of experience and brought in a guy with this kind of experience if that was what they were looking for.
Right.
The answer is yes. We do disagree. But on much of the content tonight, Steve is very active tonight. On much of the content tonight, we happen to agree. There have been times, plenty of times, that we've disagreed. But
it's just hard when
we don't talk about this in advance. We don't come in. It's like, this is what I'm going to talk about. You can, whatever. We're all going here. So it's hard. What were you saying, Jesse?
I said it's hard when there's just two just logically smart people on the same podcast at the same time. That was a joke. I hope everyone realized that was a joke.
Yeah. And some context on Hartman's career numbers from Wake Forest, by the way. He would be Notre Dame's all-time passing leader with his 12,967 yards. Brady Quinn would be second. Brady Quinn is the all-time leader, but he would be second with 11,762, and then Ian Book would be third. Hartman would be Notre Dame's all-time touchdown passing leader. Quinn finished his career with 95. Of course, Hartman has 110, Book 72. Tommy Rees, 61, one more than Jimmy Clausen had. And Hartman will also be Notre Dame's single-season passing leader. In 2021, he passed for over 4,200 yards. Quinn is currently number one with 39-19 back in his 2005 season. Jimmy Clausen is second in the Notre Dame record books with 37-22 in 2009. And Hartman would also be number 1 and 2 in the single-season touchdown passing list. He had 39 and 38 the last 2 seasons. Brady Quinn, 37 back in 2006. Ian Book, 34 in 2019. So, again, you're bringing in a very accomplished FBS level quarterback with a lot of experience, and that's you plop him
I just
in.
can't believe the amount of people who are just like, no, I don't want, or like potentially like don't want Hartman. Why would you not want to bring in a stud player, like a guy that has proven success? It's only going to prove that Tyler Buckner is able to do it and he can beat out a guy like that, or you have that kind of potential, firepower that Hartman has proven throughout, 5 career seasons.
Look, it's just a little context, Irishman. He said we're comparing apples to oranges because of Wake Forest offensive system. That's why Hartman is coming here to begin with, because it's a different system that he hopes can, send him to the NFL. John says Tyler is better than Sam Hartman. Again, they're going to compete for the job, so we'll find out. And The other side of this is there were a lot of people just completely ready to discard Tyler Buckner after seeing those first two starts. And it was kind of, you know, good riddance kind of thing. There were a lot of people like that. Now, I don't know if that's all the same people who are, saying, who are all in on Tyler Buckner right now. But one game I'm saying definitely seems to have swayed a lot of people. One game in the Gator Bowl. I mean, we all knew there was talent. We all knew there was a lot of upside with Tyler Buckner. People who watched him back in training camp, we saw that. But a lot of people want to push all their chips in on Tyler Buckner right now, because the other side of this is, if you weren't going to bring in a transfer, you were going to go into next season with Tyler Buckner and Steve Angeli, who has basically a handful of snaps to his credit in his career. Those are going to be your two quarterbacks, with an injury-prone Tyler Buckner and, of course, Kenny Minchey as well. But that was going to be your quarterback room. So if something happened, you were going to go right back to no experience, and you're kind of like, everything has to be perfect, working your way through a season. And it would be, college football playoff could become not a reality very soon if something happened to Tyler Buckner early next season, and you're going, you're trying to work your way through with a completely inexperienced quarterback.
Yeah.
You're trying not to agree with me now, aren't you?
Maybe I'll start playing devil's advocate here soon.
Chris said Notre Dame didn't choose Sam Hartman when he was in high school. His class and Notre Dame chose Phil Jurkovec. And, is Phil Jurkovec, did that turn out to be a good choice? I don't know. He didn't fare very well at Boston College in his couple seasons, and now he's going to Pittsburgh. I mean, you're right about that. A lot of people didn't choose Tom Brady either coming out of high school. And the fact, like someone said earlier, he was a 6th round draft pick. Guys develop at different rates. And Sam Hartman has definitely played in a system that has been conducive to getting him some big numbers. There's no doubt about that.
Can we just all at least agree that, like, having this kind of issue, or I guess controversy, is a good issue?
A good thing. It's a good
have.
Thing.
Like,
right.
Isn't this the position that everyone's been clamoring about over, the last however many years, saying that, if Notre Dame had the elite quarterback, they can make that next step. Notre Dame's just missing a quarterback. Well, if you have two great talents in the same room, I think that's a great situation to have.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's, like, whatever that is, D3GA. I guess this is a good problem. We're talking about who's the better quarterback. And, as Bry Guy says, yes. Where'd it go? There it is. Competition is good. Yes, it's good. It's good. It's only going to be good for the program. I guarantee you. Even if it's a bumper or two along the way, I guarantee it. And we're going to find out, like, this was the other thing that we talked about earlier this week. For all the digs on Tommy Rees all season, some of them deserved, but
he went out and got his quarterback.
I think he got the most he could have gotten out of Drew Pine this season. And when he got the quarterback back, who was the starting quarterback at the start of the year, look what he was able to do with that guy in the Gator Bowl. Look at the kind of game Tyler Buckner turned in the Gator Bowl. So now apply that to a guy who you might say, well, he was this when he was coming out of high school. They wanted this guy. They didn't, whatever it happens to be. Well, 6 years later, 5 years later, I guess technically, going into his 6th season, whatever that guy was coming out of high school, he's a different guy. And now that's the guy that Tommy Rees, that's the toy that Tommy Rees gets to drop into this offense with all that talent around him. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think
overall, I'm very excited about this because, again, like I said, if Hartman comes in, and because there's going to be a competition, and Buckner beats him out, that should just make you feel even better about what Tyler Buckner can do. And you've seen what Hartman has done and proven in the past. So either way, I feel like whoever starts at quarterback next season, Notre Dame is going to be in great hands and going to have a lot of potential to get right back into that playoff and maybe go even a little bit further than they have in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember, we were just talking about the Tyler Buchner thing. There were a lot of people divided on the whole should Tyler Buchner get to start and all that kind of stuff going into the bowl. But again, the way he played in the bowl, even as we got closer to the bowl, I think people were kind of swayed, probably because there was really no other option at that point. But I think people got swayed pretty quickly when they saw what Tyler Buchner was able to do. I think it's going to be a good competition. Do I think Sam Hartman is going to win the competition? Yeah, ultimately I do. But again, I think that he can make Tyler Buchner a much better quarterback and set Tyler Buchner up to be the guy in 2024.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Be careful. You're not supposed to agree with me. All right. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire. We got into a very good discussion about Sam Hartman, and I think it's time to loosen the mood up a little bit with some rapid fire.
That's right. But we're going to continue the Sam Hartman talk in rapid fire. Scale of 1 to 10. What does Sam Hartman transferring to Notre Dame for Marcus Freeman what does it do for Marcus Freeman in the big picture in terms of potentially attracting more transfer players?
For me, I'm going to set this. I think it'd be too far to take this at like a 10 out of 10, but I definitely think it sets a precedence that, that this was considered by many the top quarterback in the portal. So if you can land what is considered to be the best quarterback in the portal and knowing that, that you need help at quarterback or you're seeking help at quarterback and you can go out and get the best guy, I think that sets it for me around a 7 or 8 on that scale. I think that it shows that Marcus Freeman can get it done. And I think other transfer, portal players are going to realize that. And especially if you see someone like Hartman have a really good year and it boosts his kind of overall draft grade, I think that is only going to help him too, because if he has success, then other transfer portals will say, hey, I got a year left. I know I'm a pretty solid player and I want to take my game to the next level. Then why not go to a school that has proven success of doing that?
Yeah, exactly. And Derek is all in. He's pushing all this. This one goes to 11 for Derek. So yeah. And I'm the same, because now, like, especially for this team, because Notre Dame has been, they've got a kicker, punter, and they've got they obviously went out and got a wide receiver, but now they've got a quarterback, and you've got a quarterback with a track record of winning, and then all these other things that are going to be added into the mix. I'm really curious to see, like, just for this alone, with Notre Dame still needing to add something at the defensive line specifically, that being the biggest pressing need right now. Like, does that help maybe push somebody over the edge to say, you know what, Notre Dame only went to the Gator Bowl this year. Marcus Freeman's a great guy and all, but what am I going to really get out of this program? I think that they can go out and get some legitimate talent, and I think that it helps them going forward as well. So I'm pushing mine up, not quite to 11, but I'm pushing mine up to 9. I think that it getting a guy like this and what Notre Dame can become with a veteran quarterback sitting in that position, I think that it's really going to help them going forward with their ability to attract some of these guys. And yeah, like Caleb Smith, pretty much, I'd be smiling pretty big right now too, and I'd be smiling pretty big if I were any of these receivers right now. So again, now that Hartman is at Notre Dame, how do you balance winning now, this upcoming season, along with Tyler Buchner's development?
Well, I think you can do both at the same time. If Buchner has the right mindset and mentality going into it, assuming that he gets beat out by someone like Hartman, because it's only going to develop him. And I know that there's nothing like starting experience is the best development that you're going to get. But when we're talking about, the offensive line that Notre Dame has, the 3 running backs that Notre Dame has, and to me, some stud wide receivers, it only makes sense. The goal every year is to win now. And, I hate to break it to a lot of people, Notre Dame hasn't won a national championship since 1988. And so if you want your best shot at winning a national championship, you kind of have to set aside, the development stuff. And I alluded to it earlier. Clemson and Alabama don't have any worries about that because their goal, Saban's goal, Dabo's goal is to win every year. And what's the best way to get to that goal? And And so if that means starting a guy for a year and, potentially sitting a guy and letting him develop and then letting him get his 2 years after that, I don't see anything wrong with that because, you don't play for second place. You don't play for third place. You can potentially land there at the end of the season, but your goal at this end of the season is to go all in and to make that national championship. So to me, that's got to be the overall goal. So I'm okay with that balance of, kind of setting aside Buckner's in-game development for a season because he can develop on the side from a great quarterback with a lot of experience, and Notre Dame can potentially have a better shot at winning the national championship.
Yeah, I completely agree. Whatever gives you the best chance to compete for a national championship, that's what that has to be at the front of your list. I mean, what have Notre Dame fans been clamoring for forever? Win a national championship. This is the longest Notre Dame has ever gone, 1988 to now. So we're like 35 years now going on at this point. That's the longest stretch that Notre Dame has ever gone without winning a national championship. So if this gives you the best chance to win a national championship, in your estimation, as a head coach and a coaching staff, you've got to go out and make the move. And again, what you hope for is that by bringing in a veteran like this, you're going to take a kid like Tyler Buchner with a ton of talent and upside, and it's only going to make him better between the competition and working with the guy like Hartman in the room, and it's going to make the other guys behind him better as well. So I agree. Winning the national championship, giving yourself the chance to win the national championship, that's got to be the main goal. And I think that this move gives them a better chance than if they don't make this move. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Hartman revealed last month that he had to have a rib removed, and he now has it in his refrigerator, and he plans to get it made into a necklace.
That's on some next level weird stuff for me. That seems like a spiritual, like I am keeping this rib to, and I'm gonna wear it around my necklace or as a necklace because I don't need a rib, and it's just gonna give me that much more strength. I don't know. That it just feels kind of like voodoo-esque to me. It's a little weird. I personally wouldn't do it, but hey, if that's what if that's what Hartman wants to do, go ahead. I just personally, I'm not a type of guy who, a tooth falls out, I'm not putting it on a necklace and wearing it, or if I need to have some sort of procedure where something's coming out, I'm not just keeping that, or like it's just kind of weird, but again, if that's Sam Hartman's thing, that's Sam Hartman's thing. It's just not my thing.
It's definitely strange. Like the fact that he has it in his refrigerator, that might be the strangest thing. Like put it in the freezer or something, wrap it up and just make sure that it's not by the dog bones or anything like that, I guess. Make it into a necklace is kind of a unique idea, if that's what you're into. But if nothing else, with NIL, he might be able to make some money off the thing. Actually, you can sell his commemorative ribs.
Oh, it'd be so weird.
I know. We have a bonus question about that I kind of starred right as we were starting rapid fire from the Sunset Kid. Will the locker room be split between Tyler Buchner and Sam Hartman? What do you think about that?
I don't necessarily think so. And I know it's not to this scale, but when I played in college, we had guys every year that would come in and transfer, right? You always have guys who are transferring in. And a lot of times it's you bring in guys that are transfers because of the talent that they can provide and the depth that they can provide to your team. So I don't necessarily think that it boils down to what side we're on. I think it just necessarily boils down to, as a team, what gives us the better shot to win. No one is just gonna, be upset with Tyler Buchner or decide not to be, friends with Tyler Buchner or anything like that. And I don't think that it gets into that kind of situation where you're saying, oh, well, I want Tyler Buchner to be the starter, so I'm kind of gonna exonerate a guy like Sam Hartman. No, I think everyone, especially on any sort of team, the whole goal or aspect is what's going to win us the most games. Who's going to give us the opportunity to win the most games? And I think someone like Tyler Buchner recognizes that. And I think, again, Tyler Buchner realizes the potential that is going to come out of this situation to potentially still, beat out a guy like this for a starter, or get beaten out and gain a lot of experience from someone who has a lot of proven experience.
Yeah, Irishman thinks that there's a difference between playing at a Power Five school and playing at another school. No, Jesse did not play at a Power Five school at a top 25. Sports is sports, and it doesn't matter. With coaches and with players, allegiances to your friends. Again, having played and coached, and it doesn't mean nearly as much as having the ability to win. Everyone wants to win, and it might suck that your buddy might not be starting, and oh, it'd be great if your buddy was starting, but at the same time, does he give you the chance to win? Does he give you the best chance to win? Because guys can see it on the practice field. They know who the best player is. Like a lot of times there are guys who don't end up winning the job, and they do think that maybe they were the better man for the job. And many other times it is obvious to everyone around who is playing better. So is there a chance, that maybe it could split some people? Sure. But I think most of that happens when the guy who wins the job gets out there and is not performing. And then, like if you see in practice, maybe this guy is playing better, that's when some of the divisions and stuff like that come, or, like the personalities, depending on the personalities and those kind of things. But if the better guy is out there and is performing like the better guy, then I don't think that you risk a locker room divide in that case.
And I want to kind of add two more points to this. When I played, my literal best friend in college played the same exact position as me. And coming out of spring ball, I was buried on the depth chart. And I worked my way up. And the guy who beat me out for the number one spot was literally my best friend and my roommate for the year. We didn't hate each other. It was only something that kind of made our friendship a little bit deeper because we wanted to work hard and beat each other out. It was that much more fuel because we were such great friends. And another thing I'll throw out there is it is well known that, Michael Mayer and Drew Pine were like the best of friends. And do you think when Tyler Buckner beat out Drew Pine that he said, "Hey, I'm not going to catch any passes from Tyler Buckner anymore," even though that was his, number one target? I know Buckner didn't play a lot of games, but I guarantee Michael Mayer wasn't going to drop passes, run the wrong routes just because Tyler Buckner beat out probably what would be considered his best friend and roommate in college.
Yeah. Concur. So after watching this year's New Year's Six Bowls, do you feel any differently about the college football playoff expanding in a couple of years?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
After watching this year's New Year's Six Bowls, do you feel any differently about the college football playoff expanding?
No, I don't think that I have any issues with it expanding. I know that we saw a lot of games that would be considered lopsided or not as great of games as we were potentially waiting. But to me, the whole part of the college expansion is kind of eliminating the hecklers or the people who are saying, well, why didn't this team get in, or this team kind of deserves to get in. And so when we start seeing these games, we might see a couple lopsided ones until we get down to the final 4 or 8 or whatever it might be. You're going to see maybe a couple of lopsided games. And I think that that's okay because it still can show that you can still make the playoffs, but you might not be, on the same level as these teams who are necessarily competing to win it all. And I think that that's something that is an every year trend. I think that you have a solid group of teams who are kind of ahead of everyone else. And you have some other teams who could potentially give competition and provide some sort of upset. But to me, I still enjoy seeing a larger playoff because you get to see a larger sample size of teams. And I still think that, going forward with the NIL and the transfer portal, we see, an even more equal playing field. So I think going forward, you're going to see even more kind of equal, playoff matchups going forward. So to me, I don't have any concerns with the playoff expansion.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw some really good, we saw a handful of really good games in the New Year's Six Bowls. There were still a couple of duds, but, like Tulane beating USC in the Cotton Bowl. And then the kind of game that we got from a TCU team that everyone basically wrote off against Michigan, and the fact that they beat them, that, the two semifinals were decided by a total of 7 points. But I think, like, when you look at how some of these games have gone in the New Year's Six, and then you go back to Thanksgiving weekend, with the current 4-team format, there were like 7 games Thanksgiving weekend that had any playoff implications. There would have been more than double that games with playoff implications going into that final weekend, Thanksgiving weekend of the regular season, if if it was a 12-team format this year, Notre Dame included. Notre Dame would have been fighting for a chance to be in a 12-team field. And I realize you can, look at the other side and go, well, what chance do they have once they get in? Well, you got to remember, you're not playing one of the top 4 teams. It's 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11, and so on. So you're going to play hopefully teams that are a little bit more evenly matched again. And when you look at the New Year's Six Bowl and you look at some of the results and how close and exciting some of those games were, I think that it could be, a much more fun, basically set of New Year's games, because of the fact, like, those games are actually going to mean something. Like Tulane versus USC actually would have meant something other than just, wow, that was fun to see USC lose to Tulane. It would have meant something this year. Now, the only scary part is Alabama rolled Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. And as much as Alabama was, moaning about, Nick Saban, we should have been in the 4-team field and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's kind of scary to think that you let Alabama into a 12-team field. If they're not, in that top 4, they could very easily find their way back into that, semifinal round after winning a couple of early preliminary games. But I think it's going to be a lot more fun when they do it. And I realize not everybody is in agreement with how many teams that they should have and that kind of thing. But I think it's going to be fun. And I agree with Chi-Town. I think Notre Dame beats Tulane as well. That guy completed like that quarterback was a gamer, but he completed like 8 passes against that atrocious USC defense. And that's still the biggest problem, is like Tulane, that guy with his 8 passes and Tulane with a couple of run plays, they just sliced and diced that USC defense. And I think Anthony said earlier in this show, Notre Dame beats USC if they've got Hartman this year. And I find it hard to disagree. I think they would have had a much better chance of beating USC if they had a Hartman on the team this season. Fill in the blank. It's blank when you hear someone say a football player opted out of a bowl game to get ready for the NFL.
It's a business decision. And that's the simple answer when you hear someone say a football player opted out of a bowl game to get ready for the NFL. And I know that's not gonna, you hear a lot of guys like Nick Saban saying, oh, well, you can prepare for the combine, but the combine isn't what gets you to the NFL. It's in-game experience. Well, Mr. Saban, not everyone gets invited, to the combine. It's a select group. And a lot of guys bolster their draft stock at the combine. So, for me, and again, I'm going to kind of go on a rant here a little bit because, now that guys can kind of get some cash here in the college level, I think that the risk of injury might be mitigated a little bit. But I mean, specifically look at a guy like Damar Hamlin the other night. This is a guy in his second-year contract who is like making $180,000 a year and, maybe some gain checks in there. And he's not even fully vested in the NFL. If he never played football again, the NFL doesn't owe him anything. And the NFL barely owes him any severance for the potential long-lasting injuries or that he might sustain for the rest of his life. So when these guys say that it's, I'm not going to play in a game because they want to get ready for the NFL, I mean, look at someone like Jalen Smith. His career could have gone completely differently had he not played in that Ohio State game. So, to me, it's 100% a business decision. And when you're talking about money and longevity and something like football that's never guaranteed, especially at the NFL level, when, average career is like 4 or 5 years, I'm
right.
okay with them making that decision.
No. And I guess everything that you laid out there, I'm fine with. But here's the problem. I guess here's the specific phrasing that I'm talking about. I'm using my air quotes, to get ready for the NFL. These guys are not literally getting ready for the NFL by not playing in a bowl. They're doing it to protect their future and all that stuff. I get it. But I think it's the wrong phrasing when they say he's opting out to get ready for the NFL, because there's nothing he's doing to get himself ready in those 3 weeks or a month after he opts out, that he wouldn't be doing by playing in a bowl. Now, I'm not saying that means all these guys should play in bowls. I'm just saying they need to phrase this differently. Just say he's opting out. He's declaring for the draft. He's not getting ready for the NFL in this time. That's That's my biggest thing. It's not like these guys are. It's like, oh, now I'm working out even harder now that I'm not with the team, and it's not even New Year's. All that work that's actually going to start after New Year's. Now they're going to go to their training academies. They're going to go down to Arizona and Florida and all these places and start working out with their personal trainers. I've got no problem with that. And I've got no problem with them protecting their future. Just don't say you're opting out to get ready for the NFL. You're opting out because you're declaring for the NFL draft. You're not getting ready for anything when you're not playing in a bowl game in December or early January. That's
Yeah.
my point.
Yeah.
All right. The NFL is still trying to decide what to do with the Bills-Bengals game that was halted, of course, due to Damar Hamlin's health emergency that you just referenced there. There's talk going on about the possibility of a neutral site AFC championship game if the Chiefs, who are the current number one seed, would end up playing one of those two teams. Like if they don't end up playing this game and that, ends up determining seeding, which it's going to factor into the seeding. So do you buy or sell the idea of a potential neutral site, AFC championship game in that scenario?
I'm just kind of at this point, I'm a sell on that. I think that the game altogether should just be scrapped, and I don't have any issue with it being scrapped. I think that there's enough kind of stats or metrics out there to determine who could, end up being that overall number one seed. So again, for me, I just think with everything that's happened this week, for the players, for even the guys who aren't playing in the league, it's a scare, it's a shock to a lot of people seeing something like that happen, on the field. So to me, I'm okay. The game is the last concern, in my opinion. Even if it's, them making up the game, even if it's an AFC quote unquote championship game, to me, I'm just okay with the game being scrapped. We move on as scheduled, and let the kind of, pieces fall where they might fall the rest of the season.
Yeah. And, like they've been talking about, are you going to rearrange the playoffs? I don't think you want to rearrange the playoffs and all that kind of stuff and trying to jam in that game and get it made up. Like I saw somebody say, well, play it next Wednesday. Well, if you play it Wednesday, then you've still got one of the, if you're not the number
It's a
one
short
seed,
week.
if you're not the number one seed, you're going to play in a playoff game the following week.
There's
And
just it's too close to the end of the season at this point, because if the game was going to be made up, it needed to be made up Tuesday or Wednesday, and that wasn't going to happen considering the significance of what happened to Damar Hamlin. So at this point, there's no benefit to playing that game. It's not fair to the teams that would have to play in the playoffs in a short week, and it's not. Again, it's just, to me, there's no real benefit. I understand that there's seeding implications and everything like that, but for me, what happened on the field on Monday is far more important than any seeds or any NFL, product. Because at the end of the day, again, I kind of got at this earlier. The NFL makes millions of dollars. They're going to make billions of dollars off the playoffs. Everything will be fine as scheduled. There's really no benefit, in my opinion, of playing that game.
Yeah, and I don't think so. Probably either. They probably just need to declare it a no contest and then figure out exactly how they're going to do the seeding, because the Bills and the Chiefs are close and the Bengals are just like I think they're 11. What are they? They're 11-4, and is it 11-4? I can't remember the numbers right now. They've got 4 losses. The Bills have 3 losses right now. They're very close, and because of that reason, because of what you're saying, like you're saying, you don't want the neutral site game, but you also don't want the game to be made up. I think it's got to be one or the other. I think if you're not going to make up the game, you have to ultimately come to the decision that you're probably going to need to play that in a neutral, that the AFC championship game, again assuming the Chiefs are in there, at a neutral site, because this game is between 2 of the top 3 teams in the AFC right now, and that's home field advantage is a big factor in the playoffs. So I would be fine with them playing it in a neutral site, because it's sounding more and more like they're probably not going to make
How
up
would
the
you
game.
feel about a tie? Just marking it down. Both teams can agree that they're okay with a tie.
See, I'm trying to just like that would obviously have impact on the standings as well, because a tie benefits those teams as well. It's either going to come down to winning percentage. It would have to ultimately come down to winning percentage at that point. Now, and I'm not exactly sure how I would feel about them declaring it a tie, because of the fact that then that helps your winning percentage ultimately. Like when you're going up a team against a team like Kansas City who doesn't have that tie. Joe with a super chat. Love the show, guys. Look at Major League Baseball. A lot of teams jockeying for those last few spots once they expanded. My Phillies almost went all the way. And he was talking about the college football playoff expansion, obviously. And that's there's a lot more excitement. There's a lot more excitement when you have it. And Anthony says, put it in a dome. And I think they probably will someplace for sure. All right. Well, that's all we've got for tonight. Sorry if we agreed too much tonight, but appreciate everyone for
There was a lot of
in.
healthy dialogue going on today.
Yeah, there was. I mean, it's exciting. I think everyone's excited. Obviously, people feel passionately one way or the other. A lot of people feel passionately one way or the other, and that's fine. And it's going to make spring practice that much more interesting and exciting to go out there when we get the opportunity and see how the quarterback competition goes. How much of it we get to see, I don't know, but look forward to it. We're going to see a competition out there, and I would think that it's going to continue into the fall as well. I would very much doubt they're going to name a starter at the end of the spring, but we shall see. Hey, we've got the Rapid Fire show coming up tomorrow, the Friday show. Jesse and Vince and I will be here so we can all three bang heads tomorrow. That'll be at 5 o'clock. We'll be live with the Rapid Fire show. And so that's going to do it for tonight. Hit the like button if you would, subscribe, rate, and review. We will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks again for being here tonight. IB Nation Sports Talk.